Welcome back with another exciting video. Enjoy watching and don't forget to like and leave a comment.
What if one of the most terrifying true stories in American history was never fully explained, not because the evidence disappeared, but because the witnesses were too afraid to speak? What if deep inside the forgotten forests of the United States, an ancient mystery remained hidden for centuries, waiting for someone to uncover it again? And what if the people who finally discovered the truth realized something horrifying? They were never alone out there. Tonight's story is based on real historical reports, missing records, unexplained events, and testimonies that still disturb researchers today. Some names and small details have been changed for storytelling purposes, but the mystery itself is terrifyingly real. In the autumn of 1971, a small research team traveled deep into the remote wilderness near the Appalachian region of the United States. Officially, they were studying unusual underground cave systems discovered after a violent storm exposed part of the mountain. But according to later reports, the team became involved in something far stranger than geology. The story remained hidden for decades. Most Americans have never heard of it, and the few survivors who did speak about it gave interviews filled with fear, confusion, and contradictions. The incident began after local hunters reported hearing strange sounds coming from the mountains at night. They described metallic echoes, distant screams, and a deep vibration that could be supposedly felt through the ground itself. At first, authorities dismissed the stories as superstition or simple cave collapses. But then several experienced hunters disappeared within only a few weeks. Search teams found abandoned camps, damaged rifles, and footprints that abruptly ended in the middle of muddy terrain, as if the missing people had simply vanished. No bodies were ever found. Around the same time, a retired forest ranger named Walter Grayson contacted a university research department claiming he knew about an old forbidden location hidden beneath the mountains. Grayson reportedly told investigators that older residents in nearby towns had warned people never to enter certain parts of the forest after sunset. According to local legends, strange lights had been seen there since the 1800s. Entire families had disappeared, and some people claimed they heard voices calling their names from underground tunnels where no human should have been. The university initially ignored Grayson's claims, but after national attention grew around the disappearances, a small expedition was organized. The group included 2 geologists, a historian, a wildlife expert, a photographer, and 3 local guides familiar with the terrain. One of those guides was a quiet man named Daniel Reeves. Years later, Reeves would become the only surviving member willing to publicly describe what happened in those mountains. The team entered the forest on October 11, 1971. Early reports from their journals described the area as unusually silent. Birds avoided certain sections of the forest. Animals seemed nervous. Even during daylight hours, members of the expedition reported an overwhelming feeling of being watched. On the second day, they discovered a narrow opening hidden beneath fallen trees and rocks. Cold air flowed from the darkness below. The entrance appeared natural, but strange markings had been carved nearby stone surfaces. The symbols did not resemble Native American carvings or known historical markings. Some looked geometric, others appeared almost mathematical. The deeper the team explored, the stranger the environment became. The caves stretched far beneath the mountains in impossible directions. Certain tunnels seemed artificially smooth, despite no evidence of modern construction. Then the team discovered something that changed the entire expedition. Roughly 2 miles underground, they entered a massive chamber containing ancient stone pillars covered with black mineral deposits. In the center stood what appeared to be a circular structure carved directly into the rock floor. The historian later described it in his notes as an ancient mechanism or ceremonial site unlike anything previously discovered in North America. But the most disturbing detail was the sound. Several team members claimed they could hear low humming noises coming from inside the walls themselves. Not echoes, not wind, something rhythmic, almost mechanical. That night, strange events began happening inside the camp. One researcher woke up screaming, claiming he saw human figures standing at the edge of their lantern light. Another member reported hearing footsteps moving through tunnels around them, despite every team member being accounted for. Then their radio equipment stopped working completely. Batteries drained unusually fast. Flashlights flickered without explanation. And according to Daniel Reeves, the temperature inside the cave suddenly dropped so dramatically that frost formed along sections of stone walls. The next morning, one of the guides was missing. His sleeping bag remained untouched. His boots were still inside the camp, but the man himself had vanished. The team argued about leaving immediately, but the expedition leader insisted they continue long enough to document the chamber properly. He believed they had discovered an unknown ancient civilization site that could rewrite American history. Several members disagreed. They wanted out, especially after finding strange scratches covering parts of the cave walls near their camp. These marks looked fresh, and disturbingly, they resembled fingernail marks. Later that evening, the photographer managed to capture several blurry images deeper inside the tunnels. When those photographs were eventually developed, researchers noticed something horrifying in the background of one frame. A tall, human-like figure appeared partially hidden behind a stone pillar. No member of the expedition could identify it. According to official records, the image later disappeared from university archives. On the fourth night, panic completely overtook the group. Daniel Reeves later claimed they began hearing voices calling to them from different tunnels. Sometimes the voices sounded like family members. Sometimes they sounded identical to members of the team themselves. One researcher allegedly followed the voice of his wife into a dark passage, despite knowing she was hundreds of miles away at home. He never returned. At this point, the remaining members finally decided to abandon the expedition. But as they attempted to leave, they realized something impossible. The cave system no longer appeared the same. Passages they previously used were gone. Landmarks had changed. Certain tunnels seemed longer than before. The group became lost underground. Fear turned into complete psychological collapse. One member reportedly began insisting the mountain itself was alive. Another claimed the stone pillars were producing the humming sound intentionally. And then came the incident that Daniel Reeves refused to fully describe for the rest of his life. According to his fragmented interviews years later, the surviving members eventually reached a deeper chamber, far below the original site. There they allegedly discovered evidence that someone or something had occupied the underground complex long before recorded American history. Reeves described seeing massive door-like structures embedded in stone walls, covered with symbols identical to those found near the entrance. He also claimed they discovered human bones, thousands of them. Some appeared ancient, others looked disturbingly recent. But what terrified the team most was the realization that many bones showed unusual damage, as if exposed to extreme heat or pressure. Then the lights began failing again, one by one. Darkness swallowed the chamber, and from somewhere deep within the tunnels, they heard movement. Heavy movement, not human footsteps, something larger, something slower. Reeves later said the sound reminded him of wet stone dragging across concrete. Panic erupted instantly. The team abandoned equipment and ran through the tunnels blindly. During the chaos, several members became separated in the darkness. Screams echoed through the cave system for several minutes before abruptly stopping. Reeves and two others eventually found a narrow passage leading upward toward the surface. Only Reeves emerged from the forest alive. He was discovered wandering near a highway almost 3 days later in a severely dehydrated and traumatized condition. Authorities initially believed he suffered a psychological breakdown caused by isolation and stress, but investigators quickly noticed inconsistencies. Reeves carried injuries that doctors struggled to explain. Deep bruises covered parts of his body. His clothes contained unusual black dust, later identified as a rare mineral not commonly found in that region. Most disturbingly, Reeves repeatedly asked investigators the same question during interviews. Did they follow me out? Search teams later returned to the mountain, attempting to locate the missing expedition members. They never found the underground chamber again. Several cave entrances documented in earlier maps appeared completely collapsed or sealed. The team abandoned equipment and ran through the tunnels blindly. During the chaos, several members became separated in the darkness. Screams echoed through the cave system for several minutes before abruptly stopping. Reeves and two others eventually found a narrow passage leading upward toward the surface. Only Reeves emerged from the forest alive. He was discovered wandering near a highway almost 3 days later in a severely dehydrated and traumatized condition. Authorities initially believed he suffered a psychological breakdown caused by isolation and stress, but investigators quickly noticed inconsistencies. Reeves carried injuries that doctors struggled to explain. Deep bruises covered parts of his body. His clothes contained unusual black dust, later identified as a rare mineral not commonly found in that region. Most disturbingly, Reeves repeatedly asked investigators the same question during interviews. Did they follow me out? Search teams later returned to the mountain, attempting to locate the missing expedition members. They never found the underground chamber again. Several cave entrances documented in earlier maps appeared completely collapsed or sealed by landslides. Officially, the disappearances were blamed on dangerous cave conditions and possible underground collapses. Case closed, but rumors continued spreading for decades. Locals claimed government vehicles frequently visited the area during the 1970s. Former forestry workers reported restricted zones appearing on maps without explanation. And according to several conspiracy researchers, portions of university records connected to the expedition mysteriously vanished during the early 1980s. Daniel Reeves rarely spoke publicly after the incident. When interviewed near the end of his life, he appeared visibly terrified whenever discussing the caves. He refused to explain what he saw in the final chamber, but shortly before his death in 1998, he reportedly told a journalist something deeply disturbing. He said the team made one terrible mistake. They believed they were exploring abandoned ruins, but according to Reeves, the underground complex was never abandoned at all. Even today, unexplained disappearances continue to occur throughout isolated wilderness regions of the Appalachian Mountains. Search and rescue teams occasionally discover strange cave systems that do not appear on official geological surveys, and some local residents still warn travelers about hearing voices deep within the forests after dark. Voices calling their names from somewhere beneath the earth. Whether the 1971 expedition uncovered an unknown ancient civilization, a classified government secret, or something far more terrifying remains unresolved. But one fact continues disturbing investigators to this day. No complete explanation has ever been given for the missing team members. No bodies were recovered. No final evidence was found. And according to archived reports, several experienced rescue workers later refused to return to that section of forest ever again because they claimed they heard the same thing Daniel Reeves described decades earlier, a low humming vibration coming from deep underground, far below the mountains, where something may still be waiting. What if one of the strangest disappearances in American history was connected to a place that officially never existed? What if somewhere deep inside the deserts of Nevada, hidden far from public roads and forgotten by modern maps, there was an abandoned military station surrounded by rumors so terrifying that even trained soldiers refused to stay there after dark? And what if the people who entered that facility discovered evidence suggesting something impossible had been buried beneath the desert long before the United States itself even existed? Tonight's story is based on unexplained reports, declassified fragments, witness testimonies, and one disturbing incident that many researchers still believe was intentionally erased from public history because, according to the surviving witnesses, something beneath the Nevada desert was never meant to be uncovered. The story began in the summer of 1984 when a freelance journalist named Michael Carter received an anonymous package at his apartment in Phoenix, Arizona. Inside the package were several black and white photographs, a torn military map, and a handwritten note containing only one sentence: "They found something alive under Sector 14. At first, Carter believed it was a prank. During the 1980s, rumors about secret military experiments and hidden government facilities were spreading rapidly across America. Most stories turned out to be fake or exaggerated conspiracy theories created by attention seekers. But one detail caught Carter's attention immediately. The photographs showed what appeared to be an underground excavation site somewhere in the Nevada desert. Several workers stood near an enormous stone structure, partially buried beneath layers of rock and sand. That structure did not resemble modern construction. It looked ancient, far older than anything expected in the region. And in one photograph, strange symbols could clearly be seen carved into the stone surface, symbols almost identical to markings discovered in ancient Mesopotamian ruins thousands of miles away. Carter became obsessed with finding the location shown on the map. After weeks of investigation, he traced the coordinates to an isolated area approximately 80 miles north of Las Vegas, near restricted federal land. Official records describe the region as abandoned military testing territory, but locals in nearby towns told far stranger stories. Truck drivers spoke about unmarked convoys moving through the desert late at night. Former military personnel whispered about underground tunnels stretching for miles beneath the mountains, and older residents warned Carter about a place known only as Sector 14. Most refused to discuss it for long. Some became visibly nervous the moment the name was mentioned. One elderly mechanic finally agreed to speak after several days of persuasion. According to him, a secret excavation project had operated in the desert during the late 1970s after an earthquake exposed unusual underground structures beneath the mountains. Workers allegedly discovered massive chambers hidden deep underground. Then people started disappearing. At first, it was only equipment operators and security guards. Then entire maintenance teams vanished during overnight shifts. Officially, the project was shut down after dangerous structural collapses, but according to the mechanic, that was a lie. Carter decided to investigate the site personally. In October 1984, he traveled into the Nevada desert alongside a photographer named Lisa Monroe and a former military engineer called Richard Hayes, who claimed he once worked near restricted facilities in the area. The deeper they traveled into the desert, the stranger the environment became. Old warning signs appeared along abandoned roads. Several were destroyed intentionally. Others displayed faded military symbols no longer used by the U.S. government. Eventually, the group discovered something shocking. Hidden between rocky hills stood the remains of a heavily damaged security checkpoint. Rusted fences surrounded the area, and half-buried concrete barriers stretched across the desert floor. Yet despite years of apparent abandonment, fresh tire tracks could still be seen in the sand. Someone had visited recently. That night, the team camped less than 2 miles from the site. Around midnight, Lisa Monroe noticed strange lights moving silently across distant hills. Through binoculars, Carter described seeing 3 circular lights hovering unnaturally above the desert floor before disappearing behind a ridge without making any sound.
Richard Hayes appeared deeply disturbed by the sight. He allegedly told Carter they should leave immediately. When Carter demanded an explanation, Hayes revealed something he had hidden from the group since the beginning. Years earlier, he had worked as a civilian contractor, helping install underground ventilation systems beneath Sector 14. According to Hayes, the military excavation uncovered an enormous underground complex buried beneath layers of volcanic rock. The chambers extended far deeper than expected, and the deeper workers explored, the more impossible the discoveries became.
Hayes claimed walls inside the complex contained carvings showing human figures standing beside tall non-human entities with elongated heads and black hollow eyes. Other murals appeared to depict violent events falling from the sky, while entire cities burned beneath strange symbols resembling stars. But the most disturbing discovery came from the deepest chamber. Workers reportedly uncovered a sealed stone doorway, unlike anything previously discovered in North America. No visible hinges, no identifiable language, just massive black stone covered in strange geometric markings. According to Hayes, military officials ordered the doorway opened, despite warnings from several archaeologists involved in the project. That decision allegedly changed everything. Within days, workers began reporting terrifying experiences underground. Some heard whispers coming through empty hallways. Others claimed shadow-like figures moved through the tunnels beyond flashlight range. And security cameras malfunctioned constantly near the lower chambers. And several guards reportedly suffered psychological breakdowns after claiming they saw people standing inside the walls. Then, the deaths started. One worker was discovered inside a maintenance tunnel with severe internal injuries, despite no visible external wounds. Another disappeared entirely from a locked security room. His blood was later found covering the ceiling. Official reports blamed accidents, stress, and chemical exposure. But Hayes insisted the workers believed something else. They believed something had entered the facility after the doorway was opened. The next morning, Carter convinced the group to continue exploring, despite growing fear. Using old service tunnels partially buried by sand, they eventually located an entrance descending beneath the mountains. The underground facility was enormous. Long concrete corridors stretched into darkness, while rusted equipment remained scattered across abandoned workstations. Emergency warning lights still flickered weakly in certain sections, despite the facility supposedly lacking power for years. The air felt strangely cold, too cold for the desert. As the team moved deeper underground, they began noticing disturbing details. Messages had been scratched into walls by former workers. "Do not go lower. It knows your voice. The door should never have been opened." Some messages appeared written in panic. Others looked almost impossible to understand, as if the writers had completely lost their sanity. Then Lisa Monroe discovered audio tapes inside an abandoned security office. Most were damaged, but one recording still functioned. The voice on the tape belonged to a terrified security guard describing events occurring shortly before the facility shut down. According to the recording, several workers had become convinced an unknown presence was moving through the underground levels at night. Not human, not animal. The guard described hearing footsteps in empty corridors, followed by voices perfectly imitating members of the staff. Then came the final sentence before the recording ended in static. "It keeps pretending to be us." Fear spread through the group instantly. Richard Hayes again demanded they leave, but Carter refused.
He believed they were uncovering one of the greatest hidden discoveries in American history. Driven by obsession, the team continued descending toward the lower excavation chambers. Nearly 2 hours later, they finally reached the area Hayes described years earlier. The chamber was massive. Ancient stone walls stood beneath modern steel support structures installed by military engineers decades before. In the center of the room stood the enormous black doorway. Even after years underground, the stone surface appeared untouched by dust or erosion. And disturbingly, the doorway was open. Only darkness existed beyond it. No visible room, no reflected light, just endless blackness. Lisa Monroe later wrote in her journal that standing near the doorway caused intense headaches and feelings of panic. Carter reportedly experienced sudden ringing in his ears, while Hayes refused to even approach the structure. Then they heard movement behind them. Slow footsteps echoed through the chamber. At first, Carter assumed another explorer had entered the facility, but when he turned around, nobody was there. The footsteps continued anyway, circling them, moving through the darkness beyond flashlight range. Then came the voices. Soft at first, whispering from multiple directions simultaneously. Each member of the group later claimed they heard different things. Lisa heard her dead brother calling her name. Hayes heard military officers ordering him back underground. And Carter heard his own voice speaking from somewhere inside the black doorway. The whispers slowly became louder, closer, more aggressive. Panic overwhelmed the group instantly. Lisa dropped her camera and ran toward the exit tunnels, while Hayes began screaming uncontrollably about something watching from inside the dark. Then the lights failed. Complete darkness swallowed the chamber, and from somewhere beyond the doorway, something moved. Not footsteps, not human movement, something heavy, dragging slowly across stone. Carter later described hearing breathing directly beside him, despite seeing nothing at all. Then Lisa screamed. Her voice echoed through the chamber before abruptly stopping. When emergency backup lights finally activated several seconds later, Lisa Monroe was gone. Only her camera remained on the floor. The remaining men fled through the tunnels in total panic. Behind them, they reportedly heard multiple voices calling their names through the darkness. Some sounded human, others did not. Richard Hayes never made it back to the surface. According to Carter, Hayes suddenly stopped running inside one corridor and stared into the darkness ahead, as if seeing someone familiar. Then he walked silently into a side tunnel and disappeared. Carter escaped the facility alone shortly before sunrise. He was found wandering through the desert nearly 20 miles away, suffering from dehydration, shock, and severe psychological trauma. Authorities later dismissed his story completely. No official record of Sector 14 existed. Military representatives denied knowledge of any underground excavation site. And when Carter attempted returning to the location months later, the entrance was gone, buried beneath tons of rock and concrete. Some researchers believe Carter fabricated the entire incident. Others think the story involved classified Cold War experiments, later covered up by the government. But several disturbing details remain unexplained. Lisa Monroe's camera was reportedly recovered years later during an unrelated federal investigation. Most photographs were damaged beyond recognition, except one. the final image captured inside the underground chamber. According to leaked descriptions from investigators, the photograph showed the black doorway standing open in total darkness, and inside the darkness, two pale human-like eyes reflecting directly toward the camera, eyes that did not belong to any of the group. Even today, strange disappearances continue to be reported throughout isolated desert regions near restricted federal land in Nevada. Travelers occasionally describe hearing voices in empty desert valleys late at night, voices asking for help, voices calling their names. And according to local legends, some doors buried beneath the earth were never meant